But it's 10:45, and we do have a called meeting. And I would like to call that called meeting to order at 10:45. The purpose of the called meeting is to discuss an intergovernmental agreement with Pickens County and the city of Jasper regarding the city ball fields that they have. I will give just a little bit of a history as to what led to this conversation. As we were taking a look at, many of you know that one of the projects for the 6 years of the SPLOST that we currently have was in Parks and Recreation. So immediately you want to jump out and start working on your parks and your ball fields, but if we started to put lights in before we did a master plan, we wouldn't have been able to use those lights if we had to move the ball fields in the future. So we wanted to have time to really work on developing a master plan for what was going to be done in that area, but we still needed lit ball fields at the time, and we needed to be able to spread those fields out a little bit. So that led to a discussion with Brian and then also with the city of Jasper as to what they were doing at that particular time with the city ball fields. So you have the upper and the lower ball fields at Jasper City Park. They had mentioned that they had no desire to try to run a recreation department, that there was one that was here, that they would love to see kids playing and fans in the stands, basically. So that kind of led to a few discussions, basically to enact an intergovernmental agreement to allow us use to add that into our Parks and Rec list of fields for practices and for everything else, for games and practices, to be able to start utilizing those, and to have the lit ball fields so that those could be extended a little bit later, because we wouldn't have to cut off the schedule at 8 o'clock, 7:30 to 8 o'clock, but we could push that on into a little bit later. They voted unanimously at their Jasper City Council meeting on Monday to approve the agreement. Just after the approval, we had a few different groups that had been using those for practices for travel ball teams that have kind of reached out. I've gotten with Brian to make sure we took a look at what their schedule they were doing so that we can try to find a way to make sure to accommodate and work, because even though they're not part of our Parks and Rec system, they're kids that are playing ball that are our kids. They're Pickens County and Jasper kids, so we want to make sure that we are working with them. We've emailed back and forth. Once we kind of have a tentative agenda, we'll be able to sit down, but until the agreement was signed to where we could start to maintain the fields, we weren't pushing to have that meeting until we knew whether or not that was a locked-in situation. So we'll be in contact with them to make sure that we do take care of the teams and the kids that we're playing. It may modify schedules a little bit. We may move from one field to another field, and we may have to do a few things for this particular season to make sure that we can add those all in together. But then in the long run, that keeps us from having to make a rash decision. If we start to light ball fields and then we decide we're going to move ball fields, then we've just spent all that money that we can't come back and get back. We're going to have to spend it again. So this gives us some time to work on a true master plan for what we're going to do to move forward. And then speaking with Brian, I think spread out enough to give them enough fields to make that a reality. Before bringing it up, I will go through and it's a pretty standard intergovernmental agreement. When you take a look, we're going to be responsible for the maintenance in terms of mowing of the fields. In the agreement, it says specifically the fields. It doesn't talk about the entire property, but we'll do general maintenance as far as cleaning. I know we've already spoke about getting a pressure washer over and trying to clean up dugouts and some other things. So it'd be the general maintenance. We would get those fields in playing condition. That was one of the reasons the city was only mowing them maybe once a week, so it wasn't really mowed for a ball field. And we were going to try to do what we can to get that fixed up. And then we would be responsible for the utilities there, so the power when those lights. So if you see me driving in their parking lot flipping a light switch off frequently afterwards, then that means I saw somebody left the lights on and stopped myself. But that puts us kind of maintaining and looking over that. It gives us it could be long-term, but it could just be a short-term solution, and it may be something that the city decides over the next couple of years they want to move forward. And at that same time, if we're going to move forward with our projects at Roper Park, it gives us those additional fields to put kids on. And I think the city's statement to me was they want to see kids playing games on the fields.
I'm trying to remember, was that $1 a year
Yeah,
release? Is it just on a yearly basis, or do we have
So
10 years like?
It's an automatic renewal up to 10 years. It will renew annually on the $1, but it's an automatic renewal up to 10 years and then could be renegotiated at that point. So both the city and the county would have an option each year if we so choose to say that we wanted to move a different direction. It gives us the ability to do that. That's under section 4, under the automatic renewal.
And I was curious, will y'all have to have an actual rec department employee on site at those fields, or no?
So, provided that y'all do sign the IGA, we're gonna have to look at adding probably another staff member, just so, because right now we have 2 people in maintenance, and between getting the pool ready and getting the ball fields ready, they're spread pretty thin. So I would ask if we could talk about budgeting another employee so that they could have more people to send to those fields. We actually have games, we'll have staff there keeping the books, things of that nature. We'll have umpires, of course. And then Seth and myself, who go home that way, we'll be making spot checks on those fields as well. So.
Do you have a ballpark, what that extra employee might cost? Just a ballpark?
I don't know. We would probably start it off, we normally, for our new hires, around $10 an hour. So that's where we would probably start, trying to find somebody at that rate.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sounds like a win-win.
Well, I mean, that's one thing that, I've been here for 8 years, it'll be 8 years towards the end of this month, and one thing that's always been on our wish list is to have more lit ball fields. We're one of the darkest parks in North Georgia. The ability to have more lit fields is a game changer for us. And providing y'all sign the IGA, we'll be good stewards of the city's parks. But I think that's going to be a great thing for us.
Do y'all have any other questions for them before we move forward?
Sounds good.
Well, can I have a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the county and the city?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
That's the only item that we have on the agenda for the call portion. Is there any public comment related to that anyone would like to?
Chris?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a comment. You mentioned the master plan for the park. Who is doing that, and
We haven't started that process yet. So that was after our work planning retreat. That was one of the topics that we were going to discuss in the planning retreat, that we could then reach out to the Parks and Rec. There was one done a few years ago based on, I think, 100-acre plot of land. It wasn't on our existing piece of property. So if we took the existing piece of property and we looked at trying to redo one, but that was one of the topics that I wanted to have on the agenda before we charge the field as hard as we can. I wanted to stop and actually have all of us take a look at it, and that way all commissioners and everybody involved, and then we could reach out to our Parks and Rec board as well to be a part of that master plan process, and then know what we're moving forward with. So
that accounts accumulate a lot of money.
yeah, that gets us to the point where we can then start the moving it. But I just didn't want to do it before we all were on the same page, per se. So, Mr. Dobbs.
Quick observation, as a local cattle farmer, it's one of the hardest things to do is catch a newborn calf and put an ear tag in its ear. As a government employee, one of the hardest things to do is to corral the local government attorney after a meeting so that you can bounce things off of his head. And I would hope that that could probably happen today after the meeting.
You're not playing my ear.
He'll walk out here with a tag.
Don't worry.
You're way behind me. You're
See,
way behind
that's
me.
what happened, that's what happened, yeah.
Mr. Cleghorn, I know as a member of the Parks and Rec board, I wanted to make sure to see if you had anything.
As long as my greatest fear of getting involved with the city of Jasper is worked out. Okay, well, most of y'all in here know who I am, so. We're gonna make that park, if our babies are gonna be over there playing, that park, regardless of who owns it, is going to meet PCRD standards. Period. Now, we're gonna have to spend some money over there cutting the grass, because it looks like Roy Dobbs been over there trying to raise cattle in it now. So, I mean, we're gonna have to spend a chunk of change to get that thing upright. I just wanna make sure, as an advisory board member, that there's something in that IGA that covers us, because I don't want us to spend, or Brian and Seth, to spend their money that we should be putting down there at the farm on this, and then them come up and say, well, we've had a bunch of complaints from travel ballpark, that's not my problem. I just wanna make sure that we're covered,
Yeah.
that we're not gonna dump a bunch of money in this thing, get it up to PCRD standard, and then them, you know, a year from now say, well, you know, it's not working out for us. Because that's a bad deal. I mean, Helen Keller could say that's a bad deal. We want it, I mean, we want to work it out, and so we got, like you said, we'd like it to be a long-term solution.
Right.
But if it's, we spend a bunch of money and then a year from now they say, no, we're not gonna do this anymore, then we're out. You know, we don't have lights down there because we didn't put them because we got these, and then they've took the ball fields back. So as long as you're comfortable and you think we're not gonna get the short end of the stick on this,
I
Well, I
think you're
guess-
fine. I mean, I've talked with Steve, the mayor, and some of the guys, I don't see them doing that. I think they'll
I don't-
honor what they
In
say.
multiple conversations, but
Yeah.
you're involved in two different governing bodies
Right.
with elected officials, and so my comment to Brian was, I feel safe for 4 years that we've got a great situation, that we'll be able to make sure that we can have our plans in place to do what we need to. So as far as any major expense investment, I don't plan on us going other than to get things up to the
Right.
standard to where we're using it. But we'll get our use out of what we're putting into that, and then as we get our plan together for Roper Park, that we know where we're gonna work on both sides, will, I think, be in good shape. I feel comfortable after meeting with both the city manager and the mayor and talking and with several of their council members that they fully support, and they all wanna see, the fields being used again. They wanna see it where there's activity on it.
as long as that's where they are and they hold up their end of the deal, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, well, thank you. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any questions before we adjourn? All in favor?
Okay.
Let's close her out then. We're gonna adjourn at 10:59. Thank you.